You might remember this video that we showed you last night. It's a dramatic dolphin rescue that was all caught on camera. A group of Atlantic white-sided dolphins were trapped in the mud near Canning, Nova Scotia over the weekend. The 12 dolphins appeared to become trapped when the tide dropped, leaving them floundering in the mud. A group of locals and Marine Animal Response Society were on the scene. Good news here is that they managed to get the dolphins to deeper waters. So we're showing you that video again because tonight we're going to speak with Tonya Wimmer. She's the executive director at the Marine Animal Response Society, joining us from Dartmouth. Thanks so much for your time, Tonya.
Thank you for having me.
I saw this video yesterday and I just, all these questions, like how did this come to be? But let me start by asking you, how did you first learn about the trapped dolphins? Like who spotted them first and called them in?
Yeah, so very luckily, it was a group of concerned citizens who live in the area that called the toll-free hotline that MARS operates through the Maritime Provinces to report incidents like these. And so thankfully, they called it in immediately as soon as they spotted the animals as the tide was dropping.
Yeah, and so these community members, you say that they were obviously very concerned.
Yes.
Some went into the mud to help the animals out. What do you make of those actions?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a bit of twofold because on one hand, it absolutely shows the passion that people in our communities all across the country actually have for these animals and for animals in general, and to see them suffering and having difficulties, they really did want to be able to get out there and try to be able to help these animals. The other side of it is, for anyone who's from this area knows, the Bay of Fundy has the biggest tides on the planet. And in these areas where the animals were, which were rivers off of the Bay of Fundy, they're extremely muddy. And that mud is extremely dangerous for people to be out on.
Out here on the West Coast, very familiar. We've all become very familiar with the rescue. In many cases, it's orphaned killer whales that we've seen rescues, dramatic rescues, and it's definitely left to the professionals. Which strategy did you and your team think was going to be best to get the dolphins out of the mud?
Yeah, so we've had this happen a number of times over the years, and usually this is purely accidental. The animals are going into these rivers, following fish that are running, so they're following their stomachs, and they just don't, whether they're not paying attention, whether their clicks that they use to navigate get lost in the mud. They get caught out when that big tide goes down, and they're really down. This tide drops an incredible amount of distance. And so when we came across, got this call, and immediately the first thing we thought of was, this is not good because of where they're located. This has happened in the past. These animals get up in these areas, and it really is, they're tricky locations because they're big salt marshes, but they're really sticky mud. It's kind of like quicksand if you walk on it. And some of the folks who were out were up to their waist, some up a bit higher in this mud, and you can get stuck, and that tide is turning.
Right, and then you have the added complication of trying to rescue the humans who are out there trying to do good and to try and help. So I'm guessing that one of the don'ts here is, travel out there without a really good plan in place. How, in the end, did they make it out to deeper waters?
Yeah, so in the end, I mean, what we had to do is wait for the tide to turn, and it was turning by the time that we were able to get our folks on site with all of the right equipment and the people who were trained to be able to do this response. We were very fortunate to also get the local volunteer fire department on site in case we needed any human help, because that's what they're experts in. And in the end, the tide turned, and we were able to work with a local dive and marine company who offered up their services in boat to get our responders out to be able to wiggle and get these dolphins unstuck from the mud themselves and then guide them back out to deeper water. So in the end, a good success. The animals were in a bad place, but it really also, like I said, shows that passion from people in our communities, but it really shows the desperate need that we have here to get the resources to be able to have all of these wonderful people in our communities who can be volunteers with MARS to actually get proper training and equipment and become part of our larger network.
Given that you say that this sort of thing has happened before, getting stuck in the low tide, in this incredibly sticky mud, I guess it's an important message to put out there to the public. They may come across this, in the future. I'm trying to imagine what goes through your mind when you happen upon a kind of beach, a low tide area, and you see 12 dolphins struggling and they're stuck. Can you talk to me about just the gut reaction that you have, because you were there?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And I mean, we've dealt with this, MARS itself is just over 25 years old. So we've been doing this a very long time and trying to really build those resources here so that we have experts that are equipped to deal with that. And it doesn't get any easier because these are animals that, they have flippers, they don't have arms, so they can't upright themselves. They're also sinking into the mud. They're trying to get their heads up to breathe because their nose essentially is on the back of their head. And so it's really heartbreaking to watch. And it's why we really do feel for all the people in communities who want to rush in and do things. But the big thing is these are wild animals. And so they are also in a very precarious and stressful situation, and they can act very unpredictably. And while maybe not meaning, they can also cause some serious harm. These are very big, powerful animals.
Thank you, Tonya. Tonya Wimmer is the Executive Director at the Marine Animal Response Society.